What's your dirty little secret that you've been keeping for a long time and can finally share anonymously now?
Story 1. I think this counts as dirty. When I was in year 9, around 14 or 15 for American Redditors, I wrote an anonymous letter to my math teacher asking him to please shower more often and wear deodorant because his body odor was unbearable. I tried to word it as nicely as possible, and I felt ashamed for years afterward because maybe he was struggling outside of work, but he never brushed his teeth, wore the same clothes for days, and absolutely reeked. The sweat stains were awful. You could tell it was the same shirt because the stains got bigger and crustier throughout the week. We would literally tear up from the smell. Some students even had to leave the room because we thought we were going to be sick. If it was the first class of the day, we'd all skip breakfast. His breath, the sweat, it was just foul. It got to the point where I started failing math and needed a tutor because I couldn't concentrate in his lessons and was skipping class just to avoid him. I still can't believe the faculty never addressed his hygiene. It was honestly horrific, the worst I've ever experienced. I had double math every 2 weeks and dreaded it. My friends and I would slowly move our desks, millimeter by millimeter, each lesson to get farther away from him. He did take the feedback to heart, though. He started showering, wearing deodorant, changing his clothes, and the smell eventually went away. Maybe he was depressed and couldn't tell how bad it was. I still feel like a terrible person for writing that letter and slipping it under his door, but something had to be done. It was unbearable. Even nearly 20 years later, I still feel guilty. How bad does it have to get for a student to be the one to make that kind of change? Am I a bad person? Story 2. At my previous job in education, they were conducting a search for a new VP of instruction. Each candidate had to give a presentation about themselves, and all employees were invited to attend. Afterwards, HR sent out a questionnaire asking staff for feedback on the different candidates. One of them had previously been either a principal or a superintendent. I can't quite remember which. I'm a huge Simpsons fan, so I decided to have a little fun and wrote a response referencing the iconic steamed hams segment. I talked about how we had an unforgettable luncheon discussing the vernacular of upstate New York while enjoying some steamed hams. I even mentioned a rare sighting of the Northern Lights, just a bunch of subtle references sprinkled throughout. Then I realized the survey allowed multiple submissions since there was no authentication. It was meant to be anonymous, so they just emailed out the link without requiring logins. So, being the nerd I am, I set up a small bot on my home computer, using a VPN, of course, to submit the same steamed hams response every few minutes. They sent the survey on a Friday, and I let it run for a while, then completely forgot to turn it off. It ended up running the entire weekend, flooding their system with hundreds of identical responses. What I didn't know was that they had terminated an instructor that same day. On Monday morning, the president, HR, and a few others held a meeting about all the weird submissions. Someone had apparently Googled the references and realized they were from The Simpsons. So, the team sat together watching the clip several times, trying to interpret it. Anyone familiar with the scene knows that Principal Skinner's house catches on fire. Somehow, they concluded it was a veiled threat from the recently fired instructor, thinking he was up all night plotting to burn down the school. Thankfully, there were no consequences for the terminated employee. They didn't pursue any legal action since they couldn't prove anything or link it directly to him. I still think it's absolutely hilarious that the higher-ups spent their Monday morning dissecting a Simpsons bit, trying to find hidden meaning in it. But yeah, if they'd ever figured out it was me, I probably would have been in serious trouble. Story 3. The very first company I worked for had 2 offices. The main one, where about 90% of the employees were based, including me initially, and a smaller downtown office in a shared building that hardly anyone from our company used. After only a month on the job, I was assigned to a project based out of the downtown office, so I started working there full-time before most people at the main office even really knew me. I stayed there for several months until we completed that project about 7 or 8 months later. Once it wrapped up, I was supposed to return to the main office, but I got assigned to a new project that was out of state, and I'd be working with that team remotely through conference calls and such. So I decided to see if I could just keep working from home and play dumb if anyone questioned it. Every now and then, someone from the main office would check in and ask how things were going, and I'd tell them I was still using the downtown office. Occasionally, I need to coordinate with one guy from the downtown office, and I'd tell him I was back at the main office. So each group thought I was working at the other location. I managed to pull this off and work remotely from my apartment, despite the company's strict in-the-office 5 days a week policy for almost 2.5 years. They never figured it out. Eventually, I got a better offer and moved on to a new company. Story 4. When I was about 16 to 18, back in the 90s, we were on a school trip staying in a hostel with several dorm rooms. Late one night in our dorm, we were drinking heavily and doing dares, pretty standard teenage nonsense. One dare was to go down to reception and bring back a big decorative Aztec vase. It was about waist high. About 20 minutes later, one of the guys actually returned with it. Mission accomplished. At first, it was used as a giant ashtray. Someone threw in toilet paper, and somehow it caught fire. Naturally, the next dare was for someone to put it out the most ridiculous way possible, by peeing in it. It worked, the fire was out, and we all thought it was hilarious. Things kept escalating until someone dared Tom to use the vase in an even worse way. After a few failed attempts, including one where he slipped and almost spilled the disgusting mix everywhere, he actually did it. More toilet paper got tossed in, and by that point, the vase was a revolting mess. So the final dare of the night was for someone to get rid of it. One of the guys took it to the bathroom to empty it, and we all went to bed thinking it was handled. The next morning, we got a knock on the door. Breakfast was canceled. Apparently, someone had clogged the toilet so badly that the mess overflowed and leaked through the floor into the kitchen below. The kitchen had to be shut down completely. Among those of us there that night, it became forever known as the Aztec vase incident. To my knowledge, this is the first time it's ever been shared online until now. Story 5. At my old job, I was told I might be made redundant just 2 weeks before my month-long vacation, and my boss delivered the news with a big, smug grin. I told them not to officially notify me until after I got back. Toward the end of my trip, I went to visit a friend in New York City. He asked if I wanted to join his band on their 3-week tour across the US. I figured, why not? Extending my travel insurance was easy. I came up with an alibi for why I wouldn't be returning right away, more on that in a bit. The only issue was that changing my plane ticket would have cost a fortune. My friend dropped me off at the airport the day after a major holiday, so the place was packed. When I tried to check in, they told me the flight was overbooked. I hinted at getting an upgrade to business class, but no luck. They were way over capacity. They told me to wait around the corner. As I sat there, I realized I could turn this situation to my advantage. I went back to the counter and told them I'd happily give up my seat if they changed my ticket to a date of my choosing, free of charge. That way, I'd solve their problem, and they'd solve mine. They asked me to wait again while they ran it by their supervisor, and before I even sat down, they called me back to say, "Deal." The service desk was already waiting for me. I was thrilled. I ran to the service desk, got my new ticket sorted out, called my friend, and told him I was officially coming on tour. He just had to come back and pick me up. Now, what did I tell my boss? Well, before I got on the plane, I supposedly developed extreme pain in my right side and started passing blood. I told them I couldn't fly and had been taken to the hospital, where my friend's dad, conveniently a doctor, gave me a fake diagnosis of severe kidney stones that required constant medical attention. We toured from New York down to Orlando, across to Mississippi, up to Chicago, and back to NYC over 3 incredible weeks. It was wild. I just had to make sure photographers didn't get any pictures of me. I put on a few kilos from all the amazing food, long drives, beer, and zero exercise. When I got home, people kept asking about the kidney stones, and I just said it wasn't very nice. I totally downplayed it. It wasn't until I met someone who'd actually had them that I realized how brutal that pain really is. But hey, I had a real doctor's note and even signed myself into the hospital, so it all checked out. That's hands down the best lie I've ever told. And no, I never went as far as to file an insurance claim. I didn't want to push my luck that far. Story 6. Dirty in the literal sense, LOL. One afternoon back in college, something I ate really didn't sit right with me. I went to the communal dorm bathroom, and, well, let's just say I absolutely destroyed that stall. Sorry for the mental image. I finished up and felt much better, until I tried to flush. Nothing. The toilet wasn't clogged or anything. It just wasn't working. And since it was one of those tankless toilets, there was no quick fix. So I made sure no one else was around, then quietly slipped back to my room, leaving behind the unfortunate scene. A few minutes later, I heard voices in the hallway. I stepped out to see a group of dorm residents gathered around the bathroom, some laughing, some horrified, and others loudly expressing their disgust. I put on my best innocent face, walked up with curiosity, and asked what was going on. They told me that someone had left a disgusting surprise in one of the toilets. I peeked in to keep up appearances and acted completely grossed out. Honestly, I deserved an Oscar for that performance. Not only did nobody suspect me, but I actually ended up bonding with people I barely knew over this shared moment of disgust. Someone even taped a handwritten note to the stall door that said something like, "Fuck you for the gross mess, jerk. Clean it up." The crowd eventually dispersed, and no one ever found out it was me. Thank goodness, because I never would have lived that down. Even though it wasn't really my fault, the toilet just wasn't working. Later that day, maintenance came by and cleaned everything up, and that was the end of it. No one ever brought it up again. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.